Her painful reaction to being emotionally vulnerable wasn't new to her. In fact, the uncomfortable sensations were the reasons why she only said she loved someone when the occasion forced her to do so. Now it's time for Puppets, Pupils, and Producers, a story of mind over matter. As with most new mothers, Cassie read the latest books and magazines on parenting and swore she wasn't going to make the same mistakes her mother did. Since questions about her own birth were poorly received by her parents, she didn't know if her gestation and arrival were unusual or unremarkable. She also didn't know if she was breast or bottle fed, if she was content or cranky, and whether she achieved her developmental milestones on time. She was, however, aware that her mother grew up at a time when parents were told they'd spoil their crying baby if they picked them up. Obviously, they were referring to this definition of spoiled, and not this one. Whether her mother let her and her brothers cry, she'd never know, but she thought ignoring a baby's cry was abusive and would detrimentally affect the development of their brain and their mind. When they came home from the hospital, she confidently established a routine of feeding, sleeping, and stimulation, and eventually learned the differences between his cries. With each passing day, Cassie's love for Jackson grew stronger. When she held him and looked into his eyes, her whole body tingled from the intense emotion she felt for him. Yet, the mere thought of telling him she loved him turned those tingles into uncomfortable electric shocks that her usual state of emotional detachment prevented. Her painful reaction to being emotionally vulnerable wasn't new to her. In fact, the uncomfortable sensations were the reasons why she only said she loved someone when the occasion forced her to do so. Sometimes on those occasions, she'd blurt it out to get it over with. Other times she'd wait until the lights were out, or she'd sneak it in during an embrace so she wouldn't have to look the person in the eyes when she said it. It wasn't that she didn't mean it, because she did, but she could only say it with her mind, not her heart. Otherwise, her subconscious mind would tell her brain her safety was at risk, which then activated her fight or flight mechanism. Once it was alerted, her body was supposed to fight or run away from the threat. But because the threat wasn't real, she froze instead. As a result, the impulses telling her muscles to move built up, causing her to feel like she developed a severe case of static cling. Realizing how ridiculous it was for her to think her newborn son would reject her love, she was forced to admit if she truly wanted to do and be different than her mother, she had to face her fear and end the cycle of protective apathy. While she didn't fully understand why her mother didn't express her love for her, she appreciated she couldn't give her children what she didn't have. Once she got there, she accepted she'd taken her mother's dysfunction personally and began reframing the beliefs that told her she was unlovable. With her conscious mind and subconscious mind on notice, she went to work on retraining her brain body with her version of exposure therapy. She started by writing down her goal. Then she listed the steps she'd take toward her goal. She started with telling him she loved him when he was asleep. After a few days of practice, she moved to the next step. When her physical reaction to saying it during activities became tolerable, she faced her third challenge and said it while looking into his eyes. It took several weeks of practice before she reprogrammed the fear avoidance cycle in her brain and could say it without becoming uncomfortably anxious. The processes of reframing her mind's unlovable beliefs and reprogramming her brain's reaction helped her achieve the first 3 steps. However, she knew her last goal would prove the most painful because it involved the emotions she'd spent her whole life trying not to feel. As it turned out, it wasn't as hard as she'd expected, because without the high amounts of cortisol and adrenaline telling her body to fight or run, she could stay relaxed while she stared into his eyes, which then stimulated the release of oxytocin that, by energetic osmosis, transferred her love instead of her trauma. Her motivation to be a better mother led her to the library next. There she found several books on the effects of growing up like she did. Of particular interest was a book about adult children of alcoholics. Cassie identified with the majority of traits, and especially with judging herself as abnormal and without mercy. She also had difficulty having fun, was loyal to a fault, and took herself too seriously. While her brother Stan shared many of the same traits as her, being impulsive, overreactive, and most definitely his problem of lying when he could just as easily tell the truth, were unique to him. Thinking she'd made a helpful discovery about her psyche and possibly his, she shared the information with her brother, who clearly told her he wasn't interested in reading the book because there was nothing wrong with him. Thinking Rich would resonate with the book's insights too, she discussed how it impacted her over dinner, but she could tell he wasn't going to read it, even though he said he would. 17 months later, Cassie gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Alexandra. They sold their first house and bought a bigger one. Their babies were thriving, their careers were on track, and they had supportive friends and family. Everyone was happy, except for Cassie, because she'd finally realized that no matter how hard she tried to be different than her mother, she couldn't change the fact that she'd married a man just like her father.